Hello, Manila. Super excited to be here today. When Kirk reached out to ask me to come to the Philippines, obviously I was excited to come to speak to you, but the other reason why I'm super passionate to be here as well, this year myself and my partner, we just had our first baby girl, and she is half Filipina. Is that how you say it, Filipina? So this is my first time in the Philippines, and obviously because Ellie is just born, this is going to be a habit for us to continually come back. So super happy to be here and share the good gospel of sales. Before I jump in, I'm just curious, can I get a show of hands to see who's actually in B2B sales, who either runs an agency or a B2B SaaS company that is actively selling? Okay, cool. And of the hands that are raised, how many of you are actually looking to scale their business right now? Cool. So the reason I ask is this presentation is going to be quite different to some of the others. It's going to be very sales heavy, not really SEO heavy. But my goal for the people who are curious about sales is really to give you frameworks that you can install in your own business to get growth. And then more importantly, to avoid some of the challenges that I see all the time working with companies in B2B sales. So jumping in, I would say over the last 4 years, there's probably 5 key challenges that I keep hearing and seeing from B2B businesses, right? So the first one is they hire salespeople before building their sales process. Towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on this because this is a mistake I see agencies in particular do again and again. The reason being is they want to scale, but to scale you need to have a sales process in place to do that. Secondly, the second challenge I see quite commonly, and the terms that I hear agency owners in particular say, is we're tired of letting deals slip through our fingers. And really that is a symptom of not having a consistent conversion process. So I'll go into that as well during the talk. Another big one, and I would say 9 times out of 10, a lot of the businesses we work with, they don't have a sales strategy and a plan in place. And so this is one of the key reasons why their sales efforts aren't succeeding. 4, they don't have a reliable mechanism to book meetings. So this is kind of top of funnel. How do you drive more qualified leads into your pipeline? I'll speak to this. And then the last one, they do not know who their ideal buyer persona is. This point in particular is interesting. So you would consider it a given that every business knows who they're targeting, but we're currently working with a business, they're doing 500K a year, and they're still not sure on this process. So from companies doing 50K a year to companies doing 2 million a year, we see that problem consistently. So the meat of today's workshop, I'm going to dive into 3 areas, and they're the 3 key ingredients that you need to get right if you want to build a scalable sales process to hit 7 figures. So quick bit about who I am if you don't know me. So again, my name is Alan Thomas. I'm the founder of redpack.io. We help agencies and B2B SaaS companies win more deals and scale. Again, ex-Twitter, Time Doctor, LifeFlow Sales VP. Personally, I've booked over 1,000 meetings as a sales rep, and I've closed more than 2 million in revenue. But the last point I think is probably more apt for the business owners in here. I actually didn't start out in sales. I started out running my own business. I set up a men's beard care company that crashed and burned because I had no idea how to sell. It was embarrassing. I was afraid of rejection. And luckily at that time when I set up that business, where I'm from in Ireland, an entrepreneur gave me some advice, and he was like, Alan, if you want to succeed in business, you need to get good at sales. So I took that on board, and then for the next 10 years, I just drove in and became obsessed with the science and art of selling. So why is this relevant now? I think everyone understands, okay, you need a sales process if you want a high-performing B2B company. But what we're seeing right now in the marketplace is there's 2 core challenges that are affecting the sales funnel. One is that pipeline generation is getting harder. The methods that we've typically used to drive new meetings have been predicated on a mechanism by a guy called Aaron Ross, who wrote a book called Predictable Revenue. Has anyone here read Predictable Revenue? Just curious. Any hands? Anyway, Aaron Ross, he drove 100 million in revenue for a CRM company called Salesforce. That model of generating meetings has been the de facto standard probably for the last 10 to 15 years to drive demand generation. Since the advent of AI and tools like Apollo, Instantly, Smart Lead, it's becoming way more challenging to stand out in people's inbox. I'm sure you all see this in yourself. You're getting emails after emails after emails. And so what we're seeing across the board is that email response rates are dropping by 50%. The SDR function is being massively cut back. And this technique of driving meetings into your business is becoming more challenging. So top of funnel, it's becoming more challenging to book meetings. Then bottom of funnel, to actually close those deals, and this is probably an area where people want to understand how do you close more deals. It's becoming more challenging, and we're not just losing to the competition. What we're seeing in B2B is that the close rate of deals is down, according to EPS, to 18%, and 40 to 60% of B2B opportunities, they're not just ending with a company saying we're going with another company, they're ending in no decision. And you typically see that when the economy isn't great. People become more risk averse. So they're kind of the two macro factors that are making it more challenging to have a high performing sales process. So with those challenges in mind, this reinforces the point of why we need a high performing sales process. Why? To increase our conversion rates, 2, to allow us to scale, and 3, it's going to give us a competitive advantage. Because I'm telling you, most of the companies we've worked with, they don't have what I'm about to share with you in place. So, to the sales structure. So I'm going to steal a Mitchell analogy that he used in his last presentation here. So how do you build a process that ensures your sales will be successful? So what we see is that most businesses' sales structure look like this. And so, to steal Mitchell's line again, it's like you wouldn't build a house on poor foundations, so why would you do that to your business? And so when we're talking about a foundation, there's 6 pillars that you really need to get in place. 1 is the unique selling point, why you over any other business. 2 is the differentiators. 3 is how you compare to your competitors. 4 is your ICP and IBP. So the ICP is your ideal client persona. And then within that is what's called your ideal buyer persona. So who's going to be the person within the business that's going to sign the checks? And your sales plan and your messaging. So when you have those pillars right, and for some of the agency owners here today, to get to the root of how do you actually create a solid sales structure, you need to answer these questions. So why you specifically? Why you over your competition? If you can't answer that, you're going to lose more deals, because the company that can answer that, they will outperform you. Secondly, what problems are you solving? This is key. People pay for pain. So you have to be intimately close to your prospects' problems so that you can speak the same language as them. 3, what do we have that our competitors don't? Again, this is our differentiators. 4, what our customers get as a result of what we have. So this is selling the transformation of them working with us. And 5, what customers will get the most value from our solution. So this ties into our ideal buyer persona. If we're not sure on this, our outreach campaigns will not be successful. The more clear we are on who our ideal persona is, the more effective we can be with our targeting and our messaging. And again, who specifically will purchase our solution and how are we going to reach them. So when I say how we're going to reach them, that's the channel. Cold call, cold email, networking events, things like that. So when you have this in place, it will give you a competitive advantage. You'll get clarity on what you should be focusing on. You'll know what's working and what isn't. It'll hold you accountable to your KPIs. This is key. I see this again and again. A lot of businesses aren't clear on the KPIs to measure the success within their business. And then without it, you increase the risk of failure. So this is the process we use with our clients. So it's an end-to-end sales system where we essentially look at their sales funnel from top to bottom, and we make sure that each stage of their sales funnel is optimized. And then it's at that point when that sales funnel is optimized, when your sales process is optimized, then you can look to scale, but not the other way around. So an example of an SEO agency we're currently working with, they've leveraged this process to 4x, quadruple their sales in their business. They've been able to double their meetings, double their close rate, quadruple their sales, and more importantly, we've been able to increase revenue by 267%. And so the way we're pacing at the minute towards end of year, we expect to drive an increase in revenue 300%. So what I'm sharing you today is it's not rocket science, but these are the key pillars that you need to have in your business to make sure that you're growing. And so something maybe you can take away from today. So how can you diagnose these issues in your own sales process? So if you want to uncover your blind spots in your sales process, what we're offering today is a free sales assessment. So scan the QR code. There'll be a list of 29, 30 questions where they're strategically set up to uncover the different blind spots you have at each stage of your sales funnel. So throughout the rest of the presentation, that QR code is going to be up on the top right-hand side, so feel free to use that whenever. So the second part, so the strategy, right? So how do you create a strategy that books meetings with your ideal customers? So here is where I see a lot of businesses getting stuck of like, how do we drive leads into our funnel? How do we have more sales conversations? And there's a couple of myths around this that I want to dispel. So firstly, why do we need it? So 90% of the business owners who reach out to me with sales problems, they do not have this in place. And worse than this, they confuse tactics with strategy. So to give you an example, we were speaking with a CEO of a cybersecurity agency recently. They invested $30,000 in building a sales team to drive more meetings. In 6 months, they drove no sales, and worse, they drove 0 meetings. Why? Because their sales team, all the sales team did was send cold emails. They weren't clear about their messaging, they weren't clear about their differentiators, and basically they just sunk $30K down the drain. Why? Because they're just focusing on cold email. They thought cold email was a strategy. It's not, it's a tactic. And I'll show you what a strategy actually looks like. So this shows up as a failure to book meetings, obviously, failure to target the right person. Thirdly, you're going to have low conversion rates, because if you're booking meetings with the wrong type of people, your close rate is going to be affected by that. You're going to get high churn rates. I'll go into churn rates in a bit more detail later, and then the decisions you'll end up making through emotion. And I'm putting this in here because what we tend to hear is from agency founders, it's like, sales isn't working, our salespeople are bad, we tried cold email, then we tried cold calling, and none of it's working. And the reason why none of it's working is you don't have a strategic plan and strategy in place to be able to execute to make it successful. So the approach we use for our sales campaigns, so this is the strategy we use. It's called ABM, account-based marketing. So it's essentially flipping the marketing funnel on its head. So instead of going wide and broadcasting a message to a large audience, we get super focused on who our ideal persona is. And then when we find out who our ideal persona is, we find out the person within the company that we need to reach out to. And instead of just sending a cold email, you leverage a multi-channel approach to get in front of this person. And so an example here, you'll see, this is just what this looks like from a high level. But on the right-hand side, you'll see here, this is an example of a sales sequence to get in front of these buyers. And realistically, if you're targeting a company for the first time and they've never heard of you, you're going to have to reach out to them 10 to 12 times in a myriad of different channels. You're talking email, you're talking call, LinkedIn. So it's not just cold email. You have to leverage all the channels to try to get in front of that person. And so we use this, as I said, it's super targeted. You can be highly personalized. What I see some companies do very well here is they'll send, it's called lumpy mail. They'll send packages in the post, like with a quirky thing of like, here's a Rubik's Cube, this is how we're going to solve your business problems. Like the key thing the key message I want to try to get across with any outreach activity is the question you need to ask yourself is, how do we stand out as a business? Because if you're just sending cold emails, you're not going to stand out. But if you're like consistently showing up in someone's inbox, in their voicemail, in their letterbox, they are going to pay attention. You'll have shorter sales cycles, you can't scale with referrals. And I'll talk about the last point as well, that it's lower cost than other channels, this type of approach, right? Ads, Facebook ads, I know people leverage that to get meetings, which is good. The issue with Facebook ads is you can end up getting a lot of different meetings with people that aren't your ideal customer. At least with an account-based approach, you're getting meetings with the right type of lead. And so again, recap, the process to fill your pipeline, is 1, create your strategy, 2, build your list, 3, get your contact details, 4, develop the messaging, and 5, create your sales sequence. And so the reason why I have the Twitter logo here, and this may surprise some people, when I first started working with them, they didn't say, Alan, here's this elaborate strategy with elaborate tactics to get in front of these companies. It was like, here's an Excel spreadsheet with a person's name, the company, and their contact details. Go. And that's what we were doing in sales at Twitter. They were doing $4 billion a year, and we were making cold calls, sending messages, sending lumpy mail to try to book meetings with the accounts that we wanted to book meetings with. So the thing is, if you're a business and let's say you're not making $1 billion, let's say you're not making $1 million, there is no excuse for not doing these things. These are the essentials in your sales outreach to generate those conversations. And 6, launch your campaign. So yeah, what this looks like. So I'll just share a quick story here. A company we're working with, it's called La Jolla Mobile Car Detail. So we were working with their sales rep, Oscar. So they were trying outreach for 6 months and they couldn't get it successful. They were trying some email, they were trying cold call. The issue they had no strategy behind it. And so when I'm talking about strategy is figuring out how can we create messaging, how can we create campaigns that is going to resonate with the people that we're reaching out to. So essentially, and I think, was it Jabez who talked about it this morning about psychological triggers? You need to figure out psychological triggers to get your audience to engage with you. So as I said, they were struggling for 6 months. After working with us in the space of 6 weeks of putting a strategy in place, putting a tailored sales script in place, we were able to help them overachieve on their sales quota by 200%. And then the last part, this is probably the part where most people want to figure out how'd you go from 6 figures to 7. And so the reason I call this leverage, this is when you need to start thinking about having a sales team. But there's a few points before that we need to put in place before we consider taking on a sales team. So what I tend to see a lot of the time is founders will say to me, okay, sales are challenging at the minute, and obviously this is a meme to be facetious. They're like, we're having some sales problems, we want to hire salespeople, we're hiring salespeople, it's not effective, what's going on, right? So typically where we see this problem come up most is at the bottom of the funnel when they're trying to close deals, right? So before hiring salespeople or building a sales team, the first thing I would say is you need to optimize your conversion process first. And when I say optimize your conversion process first, the fancy term for that is you need to have a sales playbook. Another way of thinking about it is having SOPs of basically everything you will say from first call to close to bring a customer on board. Do not hire a sales team or bring on salespeople if you don't have this fundamental document in place. Why do you need this? 1, it's going to ensure consistency in your messaging when you're speaking to your prospects. 2, it's going to allow you to make data-driven decisions. 3, you're going to improve your sales performance. 4, it's going to enable you to scale. And this is the big one. It's going to reduce your churning and burning of sales reps. So when I speak to CEOs, agency owners, a line I hear commonly is like, sales doesn't work, salespeople are full of shit. And true, there is a percentage of salespeople that are full of shit, but ultimately at the end of the day, if you're not giving them a process to work on, a process to work with, you're going to have different sales reps saying different things to different companies that aren't going to look good on your business. And to show you the impact of that, when you don't have this in place, you're going to lose opportunities to your competitors. And what I mean by here, and I'll use a basketball analogy because I know basketball's huge here. If you have 2 teams, one team trains twice a week, the other team doesn't do any training, who do you think is going to win? It's going to be the team that's better prepared and trained, right? 2, you'll be unable to scale your sales team because what's going to happen is the more salespeople you start bringing on, the more salespeople aren't going to hit their quota, the more salespeople you're going to fire. And then it just becomes this churning and burning process. And last, and this is where it can really hurt your business, by hiring salespeople without having a sales playbook or SOPs, what tends to happen is you'll have different salespeople saying different things to win deals. And where you'll see this affect the metrics in your business is in your churn rate. So let's say you hire someone, they're saying all the right things, they're doing all the right things, they're getting customers on board. 3 months later, 80% of their customers churn. Why? Because they've sold them a lie. And this is why you need to have this process in place to protect your business. And yeah, this is just an example of when you do create your sales playbook, this is an example of like a sales script that everyone should have, so you're all essentially singing from the same hymn sheet. And so if you thought sales was just jumping on a call and pitching your service, then you were wrong. You need to have a methodical approach to conversion, where on each call, you're working towards different objectives. And the reason why this is important for a business owner, when you start listening to your sales reps call, you have a mental model, you have a framework in which to judge their performance on. And then if this issue of churn comes up in your business, you can figure out which of your sales reps are following the process and which aren't. And so the best way to explain this is to show you. So this is an example of a company we worked with. So Anthony, again, like a lot of CEOs, very skeptical about scales. So they were an early stage SaaS company. They hadn't seen much results from the outreach campaigns they were doing. So we came in, we reviewed their process, we saw opportunities to improve, and here's what we did. So we leveraged our scaled framework within their business. The results of this were we were able to increase their booking rate by 5,500%. And this is with meetings to their ideal client persona. So the key is, when we first started testing different personas, some were working, some weren't working, but when you get the right persona, you'll see the result, because your messaging will hit them different than the other ICPs you've tested. And so at the start, and I think I saw one of the questions come in on the Wova app of like, how do you figure out who to target? At the start, if you're not sure, you just have to test. You have to test, have a hypothesis, and then test 2 to 3 different ICPs to get that data that you need. We're able to help them book meetings with large accounts, and when I say large accounts, I'm talking enterprise companies, 500 employees, 1,000 employees. And then we built a conversion process that is now easily repeatable. So now they have a sales playbook that they can leverage to bring on new salespeople. They were able to bring in an extra $250,000 revenue, and this is just from that campaign. That doesn't include the existing revenue and the revenue that they brought in after that. And more importantly, once you get revenue, then you have more leverage to then hire people. So the big question, how do you scale your business to 7 figures? Once you have all of those stepping stones in place, then you can look to leverage a sales team. And so the biggest hack, the biggest trick I can give you here is that when you're building a sales team, don't hire 1 sales rep, hire 2. The reason being is sales reps, the good ones by their nature, are highly competitive. So you need to create an environment where you have competition amongst your sales reps. And more importantly, then you're going to have data to quickly ascertain who's good and who isn't. And unfortunately, I see this mistake a lot. Companies just hire 1 sales rep. And the challenge with that is you have no comparative data to see if this sales rep is really effective or not. The biggest objection I get with this is that, well, Alan, we don't have the budget. I would challenge any founder on that and say, well, if you hire 2 sales reps and both of them work out, you're going to get more revenue. If one of them doesn't work out, you just let them go after 30 days. So very quickly, a 5-step process to building your sales team. Firstly, create a job description. 2, you post a job on a website, ideally related to your industry. Why? If they have some industry insight, they'll be able to talk the language of your prospect. Highly, highly important if you want to run faster and ramp them up quicker. Step 3, you shortlist the top 10. Step 4, interview. Step 5, hire 2. Like laid out like this, again, it's not rocket science, but it's a process. Stick to the process and you'll be successful with this. And then the last part, let me quickly jump in. I could spend 3 hours about how to assess, how to hire, how to recruit great salespeople. But for today, it's going to quickly dial down to 4 things. If you're hiring for salespeople, you want to assess, 1, are they goal-orientated? 2, have they got the skills? You can test that before you even have an interview with them. Ask them to send on previous sales calls that they were in so you can judge them. 3, emotional intelligence. This is huge. And again, that's a topic for a couple of hours. And then lastly, culture. So when we're talking about culture, will this person be a good cultural fit for your company? And again, just to recap, So to go from 6 figures to 7 figures, simply hiring sales reps won't solve your problems. You need a lead and conversion system that closes new business consistently. You then need a structured and repeatable sales process in place so that you can scale. So it's only when you have these parts of your process set up should you then consider hiring a sales team. So anyone feeling like this? Too much information? We don't want to learn about sales? We just came here for SEO. So anyway, we're just to quickly wrap up, guys. Again, this is a free sales assessment. Feel free to take advantage of it. Thank you, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to come up to me either today or tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Alan. So once again,